Thank you for coming to our channel where we update the latest, most attractive and surprising details from popular TV series and movies. If you are a fan of dramatic stories, unpredictable twists of fate, then join us to explore this special content from Beyond the Gates. No one can prepare their mind for the moment when they hear the death sentence hanging over their heads. And neither can Bill. He walked out of the hospital with a heavy step as if the whole world was falling on his shoulders. In his hand was the cold medical diagnosis: a malignant tumor had invaded his brain, leaving him with at most 2 months to live. There was no chance of treatment, no hope of recovery. The remaining time was not enough to repair all the unfinished things in life. But it was too long for someone who had to witness everything around him cracking every day in pain. Bill used to think he was strong, but in that moment, all the resilient shells in him collapsed. In a few minutes, he could no longer hear the sound of cars on the street, no longer see the sun shining down on the bustling streets. Everything seemed to be covered by a layer of cold gray smoke. He could not think, could not breathe, only knowing that from that moment on, everything would never be the same again. But what made him suffocate more than the sentence of fate were the closest relationships in his life, where betrayal and lies were hidden waiting to be exposed when he no longer had the strength to resist. Hayley, the woman he had lived with for more than a decade, had recently become suspiciously distant. The furtive calls, the evasive eyes, the strange perfume on her coat late at night made it impossible for Bill to continue pretending to be blind. The truth began to reveal itself little by little, like needles piercing deep into his mind, which was already cracked by illness. With the intuition and alertness of someone who knew he was about to die, Bill began to quietly monitor. And he discovered a truth more cruel than the disease that was eating away at his brain every day: Hayley was having an affair. But it didn't stop there. The person she was secretly having an affair with was Andre, his closest friend, the one who had been with him through many difficult and successful years. The truth was like a hammer blow to his already rotten heart. Bill could no longer cry. In silence, he began to plan what would happen in the last 2 months of his life. With no more love, no more faith, the only thing left in him was the desire to leave this world on his own initiative. He didn't want to die alone and in despair. Nor did he want to leave a legacy to those who had betrayed him. He began to write down everything, every thought, every pain, every evidence, every detail, in a small notebook. Like a spiritual will, like an undeniable accusation after he left this life. In the darkness of his illness, Bill grew weaker and weaker. The thunderous headaches, the fleeting blackouts, the moments when he couldn't tell the difference between dreams and reality, all made him live in constant fear. But at that moment, his will became stronger than ever. He hired a secret lawyer, someone unrelated to any of his friends or family, to carry out his plan to expose the truth after he died. Every document, every piece of evidence, every recording of the calls between Hayley and Andre was carefully saved by him, kept absolutely confidential, only to be released at the right time of the funeral, where all those who pretended to mourn would have to face their true faces in front of the crowd. But the tragedy did not stop there. While Bill was trying to keep his last bit of honor, he discovered a more vicious plot was being drawn up behind his back. Hayley did not simply betray love, she was plotting to seize all of his assets. A fake will was created by forging signatures, collaborating with a doctor to create a false record that Bill had lost his civil capacity due to illness. Millions of assets were on the verge of being blatantly seized by the very person who had been lying next to him for so many years. This was not just betrayal, but a backstabbing with clear malice. A crime disguised in sentiment and fake tears. But Bill refused to back down. He took more drastic action. All assets were transferred to a charitable trust that Hayley could not touch. He changed the safe deposit box combination, revoked her access to the bank, and withdrew any remaining trust from her. Everything he left behind was legalized so that no one could reverse it. He knew that time was shortening by the hour, by the minute, but he did not rest. Because he understood that silence meant defeat, and action was the last protest of a dying man. Hayley, when she discovered that things were out of control, revealed her true colors. She no longer played the role of the grieving wife. She screamed, blamed, and finally confessed that she had never loved Bill. It was all for the money. That sentence was like a final stab through the soul of a man who had lost everything: health, faith, love, and now the reason to continue living. But Bill was no longer in pain. He smiled, not because he was happy, but because he had finally seen the true nature of those who had been with him. In his final days, Bill chose to live alone in a small cabin near the sea, where he had dreamed of living when he retired. No one knew he was there, except for the lawyer who held the whole plan to expose him. He lived quietly, taking notes, listening to the sound of the waves as a way to wash away all the bitterness. And then, on the appointed day of the funeral, the lawyer appeared in the middle of the crowded funeral procession, playing the recording Bill had left behind. The whole hall fell silent as the truth was spread publicly, about the illness, about the betrayal, about the plot to seize the property, and even the real will that Bill had signed by hand before the video was certified. When the last video ended, the room fell into a deadly silence. The usually fake faces now appeared full of confusion, anger, shame. Hayley was frozen, unable to hide anything anymore. Andre tried to retreat silently, but it was too late. Both were stripped bare before the public, before friends, family, and their own conscience. No one shed tears for a dead man, because he chose to leave in the most proactive, courageous and proud way. He did not leave himself as a victim, but as a symbol of awakening and undeniable truth. After the funeral, the lawyer proceeded according to the will. The assets were transferred to a fund to help terminally ill cancer patients with no one to rely on. It was a humane and strong decision, completely contrary to the selfish greed of those who had stood by him. Bill did not live to witness the consequences that the traitor had to bear, but he prepared everything so that the truth would be heard at the right time, echoing like the final wake-up call. And that is the whole shocking story in Beyond the Gates, where life, death, trust and betrayal intersect in the ultimate tragedy. A film that makes viewers unable to take their eyes off and forces them to ask the question, when faced with death: will you choose to remain silent, or stand up to tell the final truth? If you find the story interesting and want to continue following dramatic, surprising and profound content like this, don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel today. We will continuously bring you new perspectives, surprising details from the most notable films. Thank you for accompanying us.